An unexpected hero came off the bench for Gonzaga and helped them win a crucial road victory and cemented a spot for the Zags in the NCAA tournament.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Well, Gonzaga blasted Santa Clara, particularly in the second half on Tuesday night, coasted to a 19-point victory. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about the record-breaking performance for Ryan Nembhard. We're going to talk about the welcome party for Ismaila Diagne, who came off the bench and had a huge performance unexpectedly for the Zags. Plus, we're going to take a look at what this means for the WCC tournament, what this means for the NCAA tournament picture, some scenarios, as Gonzaga has one conference game remaining before getting into the conference tournament. But let's start having a little fun, because we haven't had as much fun on this show the last month-ish or so. Obviously, since the last time Gonzaga played Santa Clara and the Oregon State game, that was a real low point for this team. They played better after that. Then they had that heartbreaking, just listless performance against St. Mary's on Saturday and started causing a little bit of pressure to mount, some panic to set in. And Gonzaga went on the road, 2-day turnaround, road game against a team that beat him on the road last year, against a team that beat him at home earlier this year, against a team that just made 23 threes against Washington State on Saturday, against a team that got their best player, Adama Alpha-Ball, back from missing a few weeks with an illness. All of that pointed to a potentially disastrous night for Gonzaga. If that was not enough, Santa Clara came out and did not miss a three in the first 12 minutes of this basketball game. They were 8 of 8, just like they started the second half against Gonzaga back in January, 7 of 7. They started this game 8 of 8. Nothing was looking up for the Zags. Nothing was looking up. And then, just like Mark Few did a month or so ago when he started inserting Emmanuel Innocente into the lineup more frequently to give Gonzaga a boost defensively, in this game, Mark Few went with another player deep on the bench for Gonzaga, Ismaila Diagne, who's the recently turned 18-year-old center from Senegal who came to Gonzaga as a true freshman this year after playing for Real Madrid in Spain. Diagne came in, phenomenal performance for him. We're going to talk about that in a second, but I do want to point out the biggest thing that happened in this game from a history perspective. Ryan Nembhard officially passed Emmett Nahr, the former St. Mary's point guard, for all-time leader in assists in a single season in WCC history. Emmett Nahr had 284 assists in his 2018-19 season at St. Mary's. Nembhard came into this game with 280, so he just needed 5 to break the record. His 5th assist of the game came on an alley-oop to Michael Ajayi. Fantastic to see that. Broke the record, ended up getting 15 assists in this game, so now sitting at 295, just 5 away from getting the elusive 300 mark. He became the 6th player in college basketball since 1993 to have 300 or more assists in a single season. Very likely he gets that on the road against San Francisco on Saturday. But folks, let's talk Ismaila Diagne. We do the good and the bad. The good, we got to start with the big fella coming off the bench. 18 minutes, far and away a season high for Diagne. He's mostly played in very limited garbage time. He was dealing with an injury for a while, so that kept him out of potentially some more development opportunities that he would have gotten, but played 18 minutes in this game. Pretty simple reasoning. Graham Ike picked up his second foul late in the first half, like 6 minutes to go in the first half. The camera caught Graham very visibly arguing, or I don't know, arguing is maybe not the right word, trying to brush off getting subbed out of the game. He was trying to tell Braden Huff or telling Coach Few, like, no, leave me in, leave me in. Mark Few doesn't really listen to that. He certainly doesn't listen when a player picks up their second foul. So he said, no, I'm going to bring Braden in. Braden, who already had 2 fouls, by the way, comes into the game. Graham subs out at 6:29 in the first half. Braden Huff comes into the game at 6:28. This is not an exaggeration. At 6:28, Braden Huff picks up his 3rd foul, jumping out on a 3-point shooter. I don't know why he was doing that. It was a very dumb foul. And so he gets subbed out. And I thought while it was happening, and I didn't have the quick enough fingers to post this on social media, but I was like, I wonder if Few's going to turn to Diagne, because Graham just picked up his second foul. And I had a feeling Coach probably wasn't too happy with the fact that Graham was trying to brush him off and say, no, leave me in. I don't think you want to reward a guy by bringing him back into the game a second later, even if you were running out of options with Braden picking up foul number 3. Lo and behold, Coach Few goes with Diagne. I love this. I've been critical of Few this year for lots of very justified reasons. I've also tried to point out the positives and being willing to adjust his lineup, being willing to go to different options. I think that the decision to play Emmanuel Innocente more was a potential season saver for Gonzaga when he made that move about a month ago. And this was I don't know, it's about a season saver, but it was a game saver. Diagne, 18 minutes in this game, 9 points, 4 boards, 1 block, 1 steal. He had a pair of turnovers and he had 3 fouls. Sure, that's going to happen. But he was a perfect 4 of 4 from the field. He made his 1 free throw attempt. Again, 9 points in 18 minutes off the bench. Phenomenal stuff for a kid who just turned 18, who had barely played 18 minutes total this season for Gonzaga, to come in this environment, in a game the Zags lost last year in this place, in a must-win critical game, to come in and play calmly, to come in and play under control, to come in and play disciplined, to know his role. That's exceptional. You don't see that very often. This was phenomenal stuff from Ismaila Diagne. And here's the thing. Here's what I saw from him specifically in this basketball game. He is the best screener on this team. That was the immediate, obvious thing that jumped out at me watching this basketball game. The way he set screens for Ryan Nembhard and for Nolan Hickman was critical and beautiful for this team. Graham and Braden are not great screeners. They can do it, and Nembhard's so good at picking apart defenses in a pick and roll, so he can get going, he can get some momentum even off of relatively mediocre screens. But Diagne is such a big body dude that the first few times he set screens, Nembhard, it was a parting of the Red Sea. Nembhard had all the space in the world to get where he wanted to go. And then when Santa Clara tried to adjust and they tried desperately to throw everybody at Nembhard coming off that screen, Diagne slipped the screen and had wide open dunks. It's beautiful. That's the kind of basketball you need. And Diagne's ability to impact the offense, he's not as good of a scorer as Braden Huff or as Graham Ike. He's not as good of a rebounder as Graham Ike, but he is a better screener than both of them. And when you have an elite point guard, that opens up so many opportunities just by virtue of being able to do that. The other notable thing with Ismaila Diagne is they didn't utilize him to hedge screens. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't see Diagne hedge a single screen. It looked like they played him in drop coverage. That's probably just an experience thing. It takes bigs a long time to learn how to play that hedge screen in this defense. We've seen Braden Huff still struggles with it. Drew Timme took a long time to really figure it out. Like it's a difficult thing to ask, particularly like extra large big men to do. And so it seemed like from my read, they just kind of let Diagne play in that drop coverage instead of getting out and hedging those screens. A bit of a risk against a good 3-point shooting team, but this is when Santa Clara was just completely ice cold from 3, and Diagne's such a good rim protector already. His ability to utilize his size, to not commit fouls, to not come down with his hands, which when you're that big, you don't want to do, to use his hands, keep his body straight up. He came over and got a help side block, which how many players on this team have even gotten a help side block this year? Like we were so spoiled with Brandon Clark and Chet Holmgren who could just do that with ease. And it's like, we haven't had anybody doing that this year. I remember Diagne doing it against UP, and then he got a technical foul because he blocked the ball all the way out of bounds. But he's about the only guy who's done it. And he did it in this game in a critical moment and just really sucked the life out of Santa Clara with his bruising screens and his rim protection, kind of forcing Santa Clara's guards to settle for mid-range shots as opposed to getting the rim. We haven't had a player like this all year. He just turned 18. This is incredible that this happened. I'm so excited for Diagne. He's a super high energetic kid. You can tell just seeing him on social media, seeing him on the sidelines. He's happy. He's go lucky. That Mark Few talked about after the game, just how enthusiastic and optimistic and kind of fun loving this kid is, and how happy they were to be able to get him this opportunity. And like we said with Innocente, when you get the chance, take hold, because Diagne did. I mean, Innocente did a month ago, and he didn't play in this game, but Diagne came in and looked great. That's fantastic for Gonzaga to have another option in the front court, especially with how foul prone guys like Huff and Ike are. All right, well, we spent most of the segment talking about that. We will get to a few other things here quickly. Graham Ike, as much as we kind of criticized the coming out of the game and the foul trouble, he had a really good game. 24 points, 7 boards, 4 steals, and a pair of blocks. He was 11 of 13 from the field. He only missed 2 shots in this game. He's 2 of 3 from the line. He played just 20 minutes. This is a prototypical Graham Ike experience. 20 minutes. Still led the team in scoring, barely missed any shots. Like this is what Graham Ike does. And the main issue, we'll talk about this now too, is that when Graham Ike plays 20 minutes and has 24 points, typically Braden Huff plays 20 minutes and has like 8 points or 12 points or 18 points. Braden Huff played 2 minutes. 2 minutes in this game because he picked up that third foul. And after he picked up that third foul 1 second after coming in the game, I don't think he played the rest of the game. I'm almost positive he did not play the rest of the game. Mark Few was just done with it. I don't think Diagne has passed Braden Huff on the depth chart. I don't think that means that Braden Huff's like going to be benched for the rest of the season. He's still such a good scorer and a high volume, can score a bunch of points in a hurry type thing. But it's nice for these guys to get challenged and reminded every once in a while that, hey, your playing time is not secure. Dusty Stromer and to an extent Khalif Battle got reminded of that with Innocente. It's not a bad thing for Braden Huff and Graham Ike to be reminded about that as well. Other great stuff, of course, Nembhard, 15 assists. He also had 12 points, 5 boards, 2 steals. 2 of 6 from 3, controlled the game all night long against the Santa Clara Broncos. Zags also elite on 2-point shooting in this game. I mean, unbelievably elite. They were 31 of 42. I had to do the math multiple times to make sure I had that right. That's just under 74% on 2-pointers in this game. Santa Clara had no ability to stop the Zags once they got the ball around the rim. And the bad stuff, we already talked about Braden Huff's performance. The Zags were also just 6 of 22 from 3, about 27%. This is the worst Gonzaga 3-point shooting team in the Ken Pom era. By percentage, it is the worst 3-point shooting team Gonzaga's had in the Mark Few era since Ken Pom started in 1997. That's a problem. It's been a problem for Gonzaga all season long. It remains a problem. In this game, they were able to overcome it by shooting about 75% on 2-pointers. And the fact that Santa Clara went completely cold from 3 really helped in this one. But when your best 3-point shooter, Nolan Hickman, goes 1 of 6, that's a problem. Dusty Stromer off the bench, just 1 of 4. The 2 bigs, Greg and Ajayi, each combined to go 0 of 1. Not a bunch of attempts from them, but it's a reminder that those 2 players were both supposed to be plus 3-point shooters for the Zags this year, and they have not been anywhere close to that, which is really hurting Gonzaga. We talked about Braden Huff again, 13 turnovers, uncharacteristically high for them. It was kind of an up and down game, lots of possessions, lots of ball movement. I'm not overly concerned about it. Nembhard had 4, but again, he had 15 assists. Khalif Battle had 3, most of his early. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Diagne and Ike each had a pair of turnovers as well, but not a huge issue, just something that you'd like to see them clean up a little bit. Well, let's talk about the 3-point shooting for Santa Clara, because it looked like they were never going to miss a 3-pointer. Ever. And then suddenly they did. And then they did again and again and again and again. That plus Khalif Battle's performance and more, all coming up in just a second. But first, folks, when the game tips off the NBA action, it's just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you just want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay right in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. It's great because when you win, you get paid instantly. Tonight, Oregon State hosting San Francisco at the Gill Coliseum. Beavers favored by 2.5. We're going to talk in the final segment about what this game means for Gonzaga at this point, but just in case you want to have it mean a little bit more to you personally, that's the line right there, 2.5 in favor of the Beavers. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still locked on Zags, and we're still celebrating Gonzaga's 19-point road victory over the Broncos of Santa Clara, a crucial quad 1 win for the Zags with 1 conference regular season game remaining. We'll talk what it means for Gonzaga from a WCC conference or tournament perspective and NCAA tournament perspective, all that to close out the show. But first, want to go through the keys to victory that we laid out prior to this game against the Broncos, what Gonzaga was able to do well, what they maybe weren't able to do well, how Khalif Battle performed, all that. Key number 1 for us in this game was pretty obvious. Do not abandon shooters, because Gonzaga in the first game back on January 18th in Spokane had an issue of trying to focus too much on stopping dribble penetration, being more willing to let Santa Clara kick it out to 3-point shooters and then being late on those closeouts. As you recall, Tyree Bryan was the basically Steph Curry reincarnate. I think he had 35 in that game, just could not miss. Alpha Ball was great. That team drilled 18 3-pointers against Gonzaga last time out and buried them in Spokane. This time out, Santa Clara came out gunning. They made their first 8. It was shocking. After making their first 7 last time out, after making 23 threes against Washington State. And look, here's what I think is an important detail to acknowledge regarding this situation. For the most part, Gonzaga's perimeter defense, even during that first 12 minutes when they went 8 of 8 from 3, was pretty good. It wasn't perfect. They had some open looks. No team has ever perfectly defended every three-point attempt in a game. It just does not happen. But Santa Clara going 8 of 8 to start this game was done against mostly good perimeter defense. That's what made it, for me personally, so dang scary. Was they're not even, you can see that Gonzaga's defense was improved. You could see that they were navigating screens better. You could see that they weren't pinching in on shooters, that they weren't creating situations that were making it difficult for themselves to navigate or to defend threes. They had some high ball screen action that it took, like Hickman got frozen by a screen once and was a second late getting out to alpha ball, but he still got a hand up as he was shooting. And it was like, okay, that was a split second where Hickman got caught up in a screen, which happens, and alpha ball drilled the three. That's what, for the record, that's what NBA players can do. That's why Adama alpha ball is an NBA prospect, because he had a split second of time and he knocked down a three. That's impressive stuff. But it was terrifying that this team could not miss despite what I thought was pretty good defense. And then I think they missed their next at least 10, if not more than that. Basically, after going 8 of 8 in the first 12 minutes of this game, Santa Clara didn't make another meaningful three-pointer in this contest. They finished the game 11 of 25, which is 44%, which looks terrible for Gonzaga to give up 44% from three. If you told me Santa Clara shot 11 of 25 and 44% from three, I probably would have guessed they would have lost. If you told me they made their first 8, I definitely would have guessed that they would have lost. If you told me that Braden Huff played 2 minutes and Ismaila Diagne played 18, I probably would have guessed that they would have lost. But that's what makes college basketball so fun, is that they not only won, they won by nearly 20. The Broncos, again, 3 of 17 from three after making their first 8. So for most of this game, for 30 or 28 minutes of game action, the Broncos went 3 of 17 from three. That is what did it for the Zags. Some of them were good looks they missed. Some of them were contested threes that they missed. They just were hot, and then they were super, super cold. For the most part, though, I think Gonzaga's defense out on the perimeter was improved all game long. Dusty Stromer played 21 minutes in this one. He was very, very good defensively. Not a great offensive game for him, but I thought he looked good defensively, navigating those screens, pushing through them, trying to keep defenders in front of them. Nolan Hickman was a dog all game long, trying to keep Adama alpha ball off balance and keep him from getting open looks. So the overall performance defending the three probably doesn't look great from the paper, just looking at the box score, but I thought this was a good job from Gonzaga, and it certainly was enough for them to win. Key number 2 for Gonzaga was to force turnovers and score off said turnovers. Check and check. Santa Clara finished this game with 17 turnovers. The Zags 25 points off of those turnovers. Those are monster numbers. Those were huge numbers. Santa Clara was a pretty turnover-prone team coming into the game. I think they were like 170th in terms of overall turnover rate, which is about average, but their non-steal turnover rate was much worse than that. They frequently turned the ball over kind of on their own merit. Gonzaga went out and got a lot of steals in this game at 11. So 11 of Santa Clara's 17 turnovers were steals by Gonzaga. Graham Ike had 4 of them. Nembhard had a pair. Greg, Hickman, Battle, Diagne, and Ajayi each had 1. A lot of balance in the steals for Gonzaga. And again, like we said, the Zags 25 points off of those turnovers. It's a lot easier to get points off of a turnover when it's a steal, especially if you can get out in transition. We saw Khalif Battle throw on a dunk in transition. We saw some other good transition opportunities for the Zags due to them getting steals and forcing turnovers. For the record, the Zags had 13 turnovers in this game, which is not great for them, but the Broncos only turned that into 12 points. So Broncos had 4 more turnovers, but Gonzaga had more than twice as many points off of those turnovers. The efficiency, the ability to convert Santa Clara's mistakes into points by Gonzaga was critical in them getting this big-time victory on Tuesday night. Key number 3 was to crash the glass. This was a fairly even rebounding game. The Zags did end up out-rebounding Santa Clara by 4, 33-29, but neither team pretty much got any offensive rebounds. Santa Clara had 6, Gonzaga had 5. It was a lot of one and done for both teams. If you missed the shot, the other team got the rebound for the most part. Gonzaga did have a small advantage in second chance points, despite not getting as many rebounds. Again, Santa Clara has 6 offensive rebounds, only 4 second chance points. That is ineffective. There's one possession late in the game where they got 3 offensive rebounds, didn't score at all. So those are kind of things that kill you if you're Santa Clara. For Gonzaga, only 5 offensive rebounds with 7 second chance points. That's pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. It just ultimately didn't end up being that big of an impact. Shout out Michael Ajayi, though, 8 rebounds off the bench for him. again, Mark Few said he's one of the best rebounders they've ever had, and he's really looking like that. Some of these were tough, physical rebounds, flying in from from somewhere not even on your screen, grabbing the ball, just fighting his way for rebounds. He was really tenacious in this game, and I think a big factor for Gonzaga was his rebounding in this one. Key number 4 for Gonzaga was to make sure Khalif Battle brings his A game. He did. It was a weird start for Khalif Battle. He had a couple turnovers early, settled for some bad shots, picked up dumb fouls, and it kind of looked like, again, with everything else, with the short road trip, with 8 of 8 start for Santa Clara, with Ball being back, and with Battle getting off to a rough start, it really felt like, this is kind of everything happening that we don't want to see happen. But Battle really kind of helped he was kind of the catalyst for Gonzaga's resurgence late in the first half. They went in at halftime leading by 2 after being down for most of the first half, and then just cruised in the second half. Battle, I think, finished with 13 in the first half, finished with 21 total in this game, 21 points, 5 boards, an assist, and a steal in 24 minutes. He was 8 of 15 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3, 3 of 3 from the line. He had 3 turnovers. He did foul out of this game. He picked up his 4th foul with like 16 minutes to go in the second half, I think is what it was. And then Graham Ike picked up his 3rd foul like a minute later. Those two guys were hot in this game. A lot of emotion, a lot of intensity from both of them. And I think Mark Few made the right choice, certainly the right choice to bench Battle when he had 4 fouls, and didn't bring him back in for a while. But here's the deal. The story of the season can be kind of traced to Khalif Battle's performance in a lot of ways. When Battle scores 19 or more points, the Zags are 9-1. He scored 19 or more points 10 times this year. They're 9-1. The only time they've lost when Battle had that many points is against UConn. When Khalif Battle scores 5 or less points, which has happened 8 times, the Zags are 5-3. Khalif Battle coming out, having a big game, impacting the game defensively with a steal, a fast break transition opportunity that led to an and one. Khalif Battle drilling threes at clutch times, playing tenacious defense, going for steals. Like that version of Khalif Battle is great. Sometimes he goes for steals and puts himself out of position and gives up an easy shot. Sometimes he goes for steals and commits a foul. We've seen him do that plenty of times. But the aggression, that mentality that he has when he hones it in, which is not always the case, but when he does, is really valuable for Gonzaga. And it kind of leads to key number 5, which was to let the dogs out. Check and check. Didn't know Ismaila Diagne was one of the dogs, but they let him out, and look what he was able to do in this game. Huge impact for him. I put in my notes, it's kind of like he was a mastiff puppy dog. Like he was a little bit more of a puppy than a full-on dog at this point, but man, he looked real good in this game. And then, like I said, I'm glad that Few benched Graham Ike when it seemed like his emotions were a little bit kind of bordering on being out of control. I think that Braden Huff didn't have it in this game and looked either tentative. He was very frustrated when he picked up a 3rd foul, and Mark Few said, okay, we're sitting you. Again, I don't think it's a punishment. I don't think it's an admission of like, you're not ready for this game type of thing. It's like, hey, we're going to go with somebody else in this game because this hasn't worked, and credit to Few for figuring out what is going to work. I thought Dusty Stromer played like a dog in this game. He came in, he played aggressive defense. Again, not a super big impact on offense, but he hit a clutch 3 towards the end of the game. I say clutch. I think it gave him a 19-point lead. Not super clutch, but it was a nice shot from Dusty Stromer in that one. And then Ismaila Diagne, maybe the best dog on the team. He is tenacious. He is aggressive. He was literally ripping rebounds away from players on Santa Clara's roster. He was screaming and yelling and pounding his chest and just all sorts of energy from Ismaila Diagne. I love seeing it. I love seeing the impact that he has had on this team in the last month to 6 weeks or so since he's kind of gotten more comfortable with his role. Has been really fun to see. And this Gonzaga team went out and took it to Santa Clara, which is what we desperately wanted to see them do in this really important game on Tuesday night at the Levy Center. Well, folks, Gonzaga moved up in the net rankings with 1 regular season game remaining. We're going to talk about what this means. What is the WCC tournament seeding scenarios? What are the NCAA tournament potential seeding scenarios? We're going to talk about that to close out the show coming up in just a second. But first, folks, get ready to bring your favorite Zags to life. Varsity Icons delivers the ultimate collection of action figures that honors current and former Zags. Varsity Icons is the premier sports collectible figure for your Gonzaga Bulldogs. Today, we highlight everybody's fan favorite, Ben Gregg. Varsity Icons was started by a longtime Gonzaga fan who wanted to create collectible figures of everyone's all-time favorite Zags. The mission of Varsity Icons is to create figures of current and former Zags for everybody to collect and enjoy. And there's no question that Varsity Icons wanted to highlight Ben Gregg to be their first player. He has been a fan favorite since joining the Zags way back in 2021. Ben exemplifies what it means to be a Gonzaga Bulldog every time he steps on the court. Varsity Icons is excited to create more of your favorite Zags in the future, so stay tuned and order your Varsity Icons Ben Gregg figure today at varsityicons.com. Varsity Icons, where icons live forever. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Moving away from recapping Gonzaga's big-time win on Tuesday night against Santa Clara to talk about what it means for the Zags' big picture. With one regular season game remaining, with the WCC tournament coming up, Gonzaga's got somewhere between 2, 3, 4 opportunities to pick up more marquee wins, to boost their resume, to boost their chances of getting into that single-digit seed conversation in the NCAA tournament, potentially out of the dreaded 8-9 conversation, and into a more palatable seed in terms of trying to make the Sweet 16. We'll start with the metrics. Metrics love Gonzaga. That's been a storyline all season long. So many people have said, well, Gonzaga's performance is not matching up with the metrics. We've kind of explained that the metrics utilize data that kind of shows that with Gonzaga's games being so close, that's why they have been kind of more of a computer darling than the actual results indicate, et cetera, et cetera. Gonzaga is now 8th at the net, which is just crazy. It's just crazy that Gonzaga is 8th in the net right now. Every team ahead of them has less quad 2 losses, or the same number of quad 2 losses. Gonzaga currently 2 quad 2 losses. Every single team ahead of them has 3 more plus quad 1 wins than Gonzaga. It's just a weird setup right now. Again, the committee can look at Gonzaga and say they're not the 8th best team. We know that they're 8th in the net. We know that they're 9th at Ken Pom. We know that they're 13th at Bart Torvik. And again, as I've said before, and I'll say again, every one of those metrics is utilized by the Selection Sunday committee. They are given a sheet of paper with the metrics that they are supposed to use to evaluate teams in the big dance. Net, Torvik, Ken Pom are all on there. Gonzaga, again, 8th in the net, 9th at Ken Pom, 13th at Torvik. Right now, Gonzaga's 2-6 in quad 1 games. You might be thinking, wait, they've been 2-6 in quad 1 games forever. How are they still 2-6 after beating Santa Clara? Well, that's because Baylor, our good friend Scott Drew, could not get a win over Cincinnati, who I think was 6-10 in the Big 12 coming into that game. So Baylor fell from 30th to 31st. That's the cutoff for that being a quad 1 game. So Gonzaga's win over Baylor, that 38-point thumping they gave the Bears on opening night of college basketball, for now is a quad 2 win for Gonzaga. So Gonzaga's 2-6 in quad 1, with their 2 wins being the road game against San Diego State and then the road game yesterday against Santa Clara. They're 5-2 in quad 2 with that win over Baylor, now moving to the quad 2 variety, 4-0 quad 3 and then 11-0 quad 4. Baylor could very easily move back to the quad 1. Very easily. A loss to a not very good Cincinnati team only dropped them 1 spot. I don't think they're in danger of falling too much further behind where they are currently at 31, whereas they have the opportunity to move back into the top 30 and put Gonzaga at 3-6 in those quad 1 games. Additionally, Indiana's 56th at the net right now. It is possible with a strong finish that they move into top 50, because that was a neutral site game. A top 50 result for Indiana in the net would give Gonzaga another quad 1 win. Also worth pointing out, Oregon State is at 79th in the net. So the loss that Gonzaga took at Oregon State is currently a quad 2 loss. If Oregon State were to move in the top 75, that would become a quad 1 loss, which just makes their quad 2 record look a little bit better. And if that were to also happen, the quad 3 win Gonzaga has over Oregon State would become a quad 2 win. So the quad 2 record would go from 5-2 to 6-1, whereas their quad 1 record would go from 2-6 to 2-7. I guess that's not really better, but certainly you'd rather have the loss be quad 1 than quad 2. Ken Pom, again, Gonzaga's 9th. Their adjusted offensive efficiency is 9th. Their adjusted defensive efficiency is 39th. The only teams ahead of them at Ken Pom right now: Duke, Auburn, Houston, Florida, Tennessee, Bama, Wisconsin, Texas Tech. Wild that a Gonzaga team that has been this frustrating is ahead of teams like St. John's, Kentucky, Purdue, Iowa State, Texas A&M, Michigan State, UCLA, St. Mary's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just crazy that that's how the Ken Pom numbers are shaking out. All right, let's talk about what's next. We'll, of course, get you a big preview for San Francisco on Thursday or Friday after they play Oregon State tonight, Wednesday night. But that's the next game for Gonzaga. San Francisco currently 62nd in the net. And even if Oregon State beats them by 100, which is not going to happen, San Francisco is still going to be in the top 75, which is where they need to be for that game for Gonzaga to be a quad 1 game, because it is a road game for Gonzaga, even at the Chase Center. This is why, again, the Baylor game counts as a home game for Gonzaga, which is why that's a quad 2 game now. But for Gonzaga, this game counts as a road game, despite San Francisco being not playing at their actual home arena. So that's an advantage for Gonzaga. San Francisco beat San Diego and Pacific since the last time Gonzaga played them. They are playing Oregon State on Wednesday. So again, we'll get a more detailed recap of San Francisco and a preview of that game after they play this game against the Beavers. But WCC scenarios are actually very simple. It's very simple at this point. Win and you are in second place. Lose and you are in third place. That's it. That's it. It's literally that simple. I laid it all out. I wrote all the possible situations, and it's basically this. If Gonzaga beats San Francisco, they finish second. They're 14-4. The best San Francisco could do is 13-5. So Gonzaga finishes second place in the WCC if they beat San Francisco on Saturday. If Gonzaga loses to San Francisco and San Francisco beats Oregon State, then USF would be 14-4. Gonzaga would be 13-5. USF second place. Gonzaga's third. Done. Easy. If Gonzaga loses to San Francisco, and San Francisco, I guess if San Francisco loses to Oregon State tonight, and then Gonzaga loses to San Francisco on Saturday, then Gonzaga and San Francisco would be tied at 13-5. Then it would go to your head-to-head, which is split. So then it would go to your record against the best team in the conference. Gonzaga's 0-2 against St. Mary's. San Francisco's 1-1 against St. Mary's. San Francisco wins the tiebreaker. They're second place. So again, very simple. If Gonzaga beats San Francisco on Saturday, they are in second place in the WCC. If San Francisco beats Gonzaga on Saturday, regardless of what else happens, San Francisco is in second place, and in the WCC, they get the double bye. That simple. That simple. Some NCAA tournament scenarios. These are just guesses on my part, but kind of looking at what's left for Gonzaga with the USF game and then the WCC tournament, kind of projecting where I think things will shake out. I think that the range for Gonzaga is still kind of that 6 to 11 seed range for them. I think they've cemented themselves in the NCAA tournament. I think beating Santa Clara puts them in the big dance. The best case scenario for Gonzaga is, of course, you beat San Francisco, you win the WCC tournament. You do that, I think you're in the 6-7 seed conversation. You beat San Francisco, you win the first game in the WCC tournament, you lose that championship game. 8 seed, maybe a 7 seed, maybe a 7 seed, somewhere in there. That's kind of the range I think you're in there. You beat San Francisco, you lose in the WCC semifinals. Now I think you're in that 9-10 seed range. If you lose to San Francisco, I think the best you can do is an 8 seed. If you lose to San Francisco and you win the WCC tournament, 8 seed, maybe 7, maybe. If you lose to San Francisco, you make the WCC title game, and then you lose that game. Now you're in that 9, maybe 10 seed range. Or if you lose the San Francisco and you lose in the WCC quarterfinals, the worst case scenario at this point, that point you're probably best case an 11 seed, maybe a 10 seed, maybe a playing game. I think it's possible that you're a playing game. I don't think that losing to San Francisco and then losing in the WCC quarterfinals is enough for Gonzaga to get booted out of the tournament, but you're going to be a little bit sweatier on Selection Sunday than you want to be if that happens. But I think Gonzaga's in a fairly safe place. I think the Santa Clara win really helps them. I do think some of these things get altered a little bit by how Baylor does and things like that. But for the most part, I think Gonzaga's still in that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seed range with, just one regular season game to go and a couple games in the WCC tournament. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Special shout out to the everyday listeners and those of you hanging out with us in the Locked On Zags Discord channel. Like I said, we'll be back on Thursday with a preview episode, getting ready for that game against the Dons of San Francisco after we see how they do on Wednesday night against the Beavers at Gill Coliseum. We'll talk about that, get you ready for that big game, and then get you ready for the WCC tournament coming up just after that as we turn the calendar to March very, very soon. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And as always, go Zags.